Our family chose not to focus on all the injustice and negativity that was said about Bill, my husband, a brother and father and son during this process. Instead, we surrounded ourselves with faith, family, friends, and love, and those who knew what a good man Bill was and that loved him. All the slanders and comments and judgments and unfounded and simply not true to slander a good man's name and try to tarnish his reputation and spew hate is just to change the sentence. That was a horrible thing.
Your past doesn't define you. You can do something horrific in your past, but you could be a better person today.
Johnson's daughter is now 19.
When I was 17, my daughter Corey was born, and I didn't have anything, no money, no real place to live. I was in a group home, but I just knew I wanted to be her dad and stuff. So.
He's like a normal parent who wants their kid to succeed. Probably once or twice a week, I talk to my dad. He always tells me to do my best.
It's hard because I know that if it does happen, he's not going to be here. He's not going to be here to watch me grow and continue to make him happy. He's not going to be able to see me be a better parent than what he was able to be.
Kevin Johnson Jr. was born on September 23, 1985. He had a younger brother named Joseph, who was born in 1992. Growing up, Kevin would be physically assaulted, would be called names, and experienced bouts of not having any food in the home. Oftentimes, he spent many nights alone. His family was poor, and he lived surrounded by cockroaches and mice. Sometimes he would be so hungry that he would eat the cockroaches and mice to satisfy his hunger. His mother dove deeper into her crack addiction and was not able to care for Kevin or his brother Joseph. Instead of going into the foster care system, Kevin went to live with his aunt, and her home was no better. He was assaulted living with her and was never cared for like he should have been. Teachers would document that some days he would smell like urine. Despite many adults being aware of his physical condition, no one intervened. Things were difficult for his brother Joseph as well because he had a heart condition and suffered from seizures. Kevin was in a relationship, and in 2003, he and his girlfriend had a daughter by the name of Corey Ramey. In the afternoon on July 5, 2005, officers were in the Meacham Park area investigating the ownership of a vehicle. They suspected the owner was none other than Kevin Johnson, who at the time was on probation for assaulting his girlfriend. They believed Kevin violated his probation. Police officer William McKenty, along with other police officers, entered the residence where 19-year-old Kevin lived. While officers were conducting their search, Joseph collapsed and began suffering from a seizure. Kevin witnessed multiple cops step over his brother's body, doing nothing to try and help him or save his life. Joseph's mother tried to enter the home to assist him, but police did not allow her inside of the home, and they refused to call for help as well. Kevin was able to escape and hide out at his grandmother's place next door without being caught. Finally, when the search was over, police called for an ambulance. Some reports say that they left, and others say that they eventually did try offering assistance. When the ambulance finally arrived, Joseph was taken to the hospital, but he passed away due to his pre-existing heart condition. Kevin was heartbroken that his brother died, and police did nothing in his mind to try and save him. After getting the bad news, Kevin went into his car, grabbed a 9mm handgun, and told his friends that he believed police officers were responsible for his brother's death and too busy looking for him that they let his brother die. It seemed in that moment he had his mind set on revenge. A few hours had passed, and it was now the evening of July 5th. Sergeant McKenty and other officers returned to Meacham Park, responding to a report of fireworks in the neighborhood. Sergeant McKenty spoke with a few teens about the report, and Kevin ended up spotting him and realized that that was the same officer that was in his house hours earlier. Kevin approached his vehicle from the passenger side, lowered his head to look through the window in order to talk to Sergeant McKenty, who was on the driver's side, and he said, "You killed my brother." After uttering that phrase, Kevin shot at Sergeant McKenty 5 times, striking him twice, once in the head and once in the upper torso. One of the 5 shots also struck one of the 3 witnesses Officer McKinty was talking to in the leg. Kevin then reached into the police vehicle and stole Sergeant McKinty's gun. The police car was never in park, and although not dead yet, Sergeant McKinty was severely injured and his foot was no longer on the brake, so his car rolled down the street, hitting a parked car and a tree. After crashing, Sergeant McKinty got out of the vehicle and fell onto his knees, but he was unable to talk. A crowd gathered around him, but Kevin soon approached, telling the crowd to get out of his way. Kevin was then able to get a clear view of Sergeant McKinty, and he shot him 2 more times in the head. After the fatal shots, Kevin searched through the officer's pockets, and when he was done with his search, he shot him again. Sergeant McKinty ended up being shot at a total of 7 times. Kevin left the neighborhood cursing and shouting, "That let my brother die. He needs to see what it feels like to die." Kevin spent the next few days on the run spending time with family members. He eventually surrendered and he was indicted on capital murder charges. At Kevin's first trial, the jury rejected the first-degree murder charge. There was a hung jury and no conviction. Kevin then had a second trial. Kevin's attorneys thought that prosecutors believed there was a hung jury because of the black jurors who rejected the first-degree murder charge, so they ensured the new jury was made up of predominantly white jurors.
But race was a factor in his trials. In the first, when the judge said he intended to ensure a racial mix in the jury, the prosecutor derided that as silly and asked, "Why am I being penalized?" implying that more black jurors would make a conviction less likely. Indeed, the 6 black and 6 white jurors could not agree on a first-degree murder verdict. Johnson was later convicted by a second jury, which had just 3 black members. This whole issue of racism infecting the trial.
Like the first trial, Kevin expressed remorse, took responsibility for what he did, but for this second trial, he was sentenced to death. Over the years, Kevin filed many appeals. Some points were that the death penalty was unconstitutional, it was not fair that he was in chains and shackles in court for the jury to see, and there were sleeping jurors during the defense's closing statement. Kevin claimed that the sleeping jury members missed relevant points made, and since they missed what was being said, they would have to rely on opinions of other jurors instead of their own. The appeal response was that even if a juror did fall asleep, it would not entitle Kevin to relief, and there was no evidence that one or more jurors actually fell asleep. They also claimed that when Kevin said he was subjected to a verdict by a jury which had not considered all of the argument in the case, he still had a jury that was attentive during the presentation of the evidence to be considered by the jury. Kevin also believed that there was racial prejudice against him. A prosecutor was quoted saying, "We sought the death penalty because he killed a police officer. He shot him 5 times when he walked up to the patrol car. Then after McKinty's car crashed and he was helped out of the car by neighbors, he walked up to him and shot him 2 more times when he was on his hands and knees. Then he grabbed McKinty's gun and marched down the street in front of everybody waving the guns. That's why Kevin Johnson was charged with first-degree murder. It has nothing to do with his race or the victim's race or mine or anyone else's." Kevin's appeals were all denied and his execution was set for November 29, 2022 in the state of Missouri. While on death row, Kevin expressed that he felt God was not there for him. He met with a Reverend Gray who helped him reconnect with God, and he was baptized on November 9, 2022. Kevin's daughter Corey, who was 19 years old when his execution was nearing, was denied being able to witness his execution because in the state of Missouri, you have to be 21 to witness an execution. She felt that it was not fair that her father got sentenced to death before the age of 21, but she was not able to witness his execution before the age of 21. She was heartbroken because she was not only about to lose her father, but she witnessed her mother die at the hands of her ex-boyfriend back in 2007, just 2 years after her dad was sentenced to death. Corey tried to petition to witness her father's execution. She even hired an attorney who was quoted saying, "We're asking the court that this irrational law discriminates against Corey and that Missouri shouldn't use it as an excuse to keep her from bearing witness when he's taken away from her. For the state to punish Corey, to not allow her to grieve with her father, to be there with him, just compounds her pain and grief." The Friday before Kevin's execution, a federal judge denied Corey's final request to attend the execution. "I'm heartbroken that I won't be able to be with my dad in his last moments. My dad is the most important person in my life. He has been there for me my whole life, even though he's been incarcerated. He is a good father, the only parent I have left. He has worked very hard to rehabilitate himself in prison. I pray that Governor Parson will give my dad clemency. After 18 years on death row, Kevin was executed on November 29, 2022 at 7:40 p.m. by method of lethal injection. He refused a final meal, and for his final words, he was able to read from the Bible and made a prayer. He apologized to everyone and to the victim's family. He said he was looking forward to seeing his baby brother, and then he said he was ready. Sergeant William McKinty was a husband and father of 3 when he died. He was a police officer for almost 20 years and was loved by many. There is a memorial honoring Sergeant McKinty outside of the Kirkwood City Hall in the McKinty Memorial Park. Police Chief Jack Plummer did an interview with The Times back in 2017 and was quoted saying, "Kirkwood can't forget what we've been through and what the families have been through. When Sergeant McKinty was shot and killed on the job in Meacham Park in Kirkwood, I knew it had been 100 years since a Kirkwood officer lost his life in the line of duty. I hoped it would be another 100 years if something like the loss of Sergeant McKinty ever happened again in Kirkwood." Chief Plummer was referring to the fatal shooting of 2 Kirkwood police officers just a couple of years after William McKinty was killed. Thank you all for watching another episode of Death Row Executions. Let me know what you guys think of this story in the comments below.